today we're talking about school meals and farm to school and how both of these components have responded to COVID-19. Like Rip said, I work at the Arkansas Department of Agriculture as the farm to school coordinator. It is the first time that this position has existed. There was an act that passed in 2019 to create a farm to school coordinator position. Arkansas was one of the last states to create a state agency position, but it doesn't mean that farm to school efforts have not happened in the state before this. There's been years and years and years of work from other agencies, nonprofits, individuals, parents, kids, all along the spectrum. So it's exciting to be in this role, to help be a collaborator, to grow farm to school programming in the state, to join national and regional calls to highlight the work that I'm hearing and share Arkansas in that space. And so just a quick reminder, if you don't know what farm to school is, that there are 3 pillars, school gardens being the first, where kids have the opportunity to grow, build, tend, and harvest produce that they touch and handle with their own hands. School gardens can look like really big out in the back with raised beds or in ground, or it could be as small as a classroom windowsill that's being used, but still a space where there's hands-on gardening activities and lessons. And then that ties into the education piece, the second pillar of farm to school, where lessons are focused on gardening, cooking, nutrition, and agricultural-based lessons to really teach about the benefits of local food, fruits and vegetables, and health. And the final piece that kind of completes that equation is procurement, which is local food purchasing. And the purpose behind that is purchasing local Arkansan produce, or meat or grains, anything that can span across the whole plate. So we're supporting our Arkansas farmers, keeping our Arkansas dollars in our state, boosting our economy. And it's when we have these 3 that's a triple win, because students have that hands-on experience in the garden, they're learning about it in their classroom, and then they're tasting food in the cafeteria. So with COVID-19, at the Arkansas Department of Agriculture, just for some context, for the most part, we have supported guidance on farmers markets with the Department of Health and, like Rip was saying, with University of Arkansas Extension. And yes, in the past couple of weeks, the regulations and guidance around that has changed. There is no more restrictions, except for the fact that the farmers markets now fall under the directive for large outdoor and large indoor venues, depending on the type of farmers market that it is. So there's still social distance requirements, safety requirements, recommendations on mask wearing, hand sanitizing, washing hands. The department has also created a lot of print and shareable resources. This is just one example here in the image about how my mask protects you, your mask protects me. So these are all on our website and can be printed out. They're in high definition, high quality, and can be shared at schools, at grocery stores, at farms, a variety of different places. And then really kind of diving in a little more specifically as to the work that, as farm to school was impacted because of the pandemic, schools had to close and we all went to virtual instruction. Travel was not encouraged. Farms basically closed their doors as well to visitors. That it really impacted the work of farm to school, because we do farm to school in community, and it has been harder to have in-person community for safety reasons. So one way that we stepped into supporting efforts around COVID-19 is with a variety of other food access partners. We helped create something called the Arkansas COVID-19 Food Access Map, which lists different places that people can find food. It has school meals listed and all the spaces across the state. It has community meals from food banks. It also has some state resources like DHS, your county DHS office, SNAP phone numbers, WIC phone numbers. And it finally has information from farmers and farmers markets on how they've adjusted their hours and their possibly even their locations, and how many have transitioned to some form of online purchasing or delivery. And so part of this map, we were so thankful to be able to partner with Uplift Arkansas, which is a one-stop shop to find information on businesses and restaurants, nonprofits, farmers, groceries. It's all in one place. And the map also is on there for people to find, like I said, school meals in addition to all of that, and community meals. And another great partner was No Kid Hungry, which is a national nonprofit. They have a texting service, and they normally work with the USDA during the summertime, during summer feeding, where families who might not have access to internet can text the word food, or comida in Spanish, to 877-877, and any school meal or summer feeding site location will be texted back to their number. It's a really great service. And when the pandemic started, the USDA the USDA also has a map, just like our Arkansas food access map, but it wasn't updated because, we were not anticipating a pandemic. And so the information that was listed on the USDA's website had been last year's 2019's summer feeding program. So that was part of the reason why we, as a large collective of food access partners, decided to build this map, was to step into that avenue right now as the USDA was updating that. And there was so much work happening through the Department of Education, the Arkansas Department of Education, and Arkansas Department of Human Services, working as fast as they can to support schools and organizations and other places to adapt to the school meals and the summer feeding realm that they had to transition to, that it seemed natural that at the Arkansas Department of Agriculture, we could still support this in more of an outreach capacity by creating this resource. So this is what it looks like right now. And we're so excited to recently have partnered with the Arkansas Hunger Relief Alliance. They have a couple interns that have come on this summer that normally support in-person school meals. But with that being affected, they're gonna come through our map and update a lot of our school meal locations to transition them from our school time to our summer time, because many districts have already adjusted their schedule. So you can see that there are these three tabs, right? There's the school meals, which is in yellow. In purple, you find more county resources like the DHS number, the food bank in that county, the area agency on aging, and then the legal aid number that you can call for that county. And then finally in green, local food, which would be farmers markets, farm stands, on-farm sales. So at the height of all of this, we had close to 1,500 data points, almost 900 school meal sites that were open and available for children under 18 to have access to food. With community meals, just on our map, we had close to 600, but those points were crowdsourced from people who were sharing information, and then from the Arkansas Food Bank and the Northwest Arkansas Food Bank. So there are other food banks in the state as well. We weren't able to get their data on here just as we were trying to manage all of this. And so it's been really a great resource. It's been shared heavily, and we're really thankful for all the partnerships that have come out of it. And I wanted to paint the picture a bit of what school meals has looked like in the state since the pandemic began. So, we were really impacted by this mid-March is when it started, when the governor, officially said and kind of like gave guidance around all of this, started his COVID-19 press conferences. Many schools at this point had emergency meetings with administration, superintendents, and had to make quick decisions to figure out what to do with the amount of food they had already purchased in anticipation of regular school, how to serve these meals in a safe way, how to get these meals out to their community, or have the community come in to access those meals. And so just for knowledge, the school meals that we've seen across the nation, and then especially in Arkansas too, were free meals for any child 18 or under. So that meant that if I was a student and I went to you know, Little Rock School District, I could still go to a school meal site over in North Little Rock and receive a free meal because of the way that the summer feeding program, which is what we were able to move into during this pandemic. Normally, schools are managed under the National School Lunch Program. Early care centers use something called CACFP, which is Child and Adult Care Feeding Program. And then we also have something called Seamless Summer, which is what all of our school districts transitioned into. That's why sometimes I'll refer to it as school meals or summer meals. So it's free meals for all children 18 and under. And bottom line, schools had to think of a lot of creative solutions to support their community, to figure out what to do. This graph right here was provided on a recent call that we had with Clinton School District. Belinda Murray is the food service director there. And so they created this graph that shows how many meals, how many students they were serving throughout the pandemic up until school ended, close to when school ended. So like I said, right in mid-March, you know, we were kind of running and operating as normal, which was around 400 students being served on a daily basis. Then immediately after that, there was high need for food because families were heavily impacted. You know, many people lost their jobs, so they needed to find space where their children could have food. Families that were already a part of the free or reduced lunch program, you know, had lost that access to food when schools were closed, so they were looking for food for their children as well. And because these meals can be served to the community at large, anyone 18 and under, doesn't depend specifically on the school district. At least here in Clinton School District, Belinda saw an increase, almost doubling, or more than doubling, up to about 800, as they were figuring out, almost 900, figuring out how to provide food. Kind of leveled out. There were some bumps along the road, like many districts felt, and I'll get to show some photos and talk about the struggles next. And then it kind of evened out at the end, in the end of April through May, around 1,000 students. Yeah, so it was a really great graph to see this, just to see the impact of how many meals were served. I also want to talk about the waivers because this comes into the conversation of the incredible work that child nutrition directors and the Department of Education and the Department of Human Services did at this time. So the USDA released many waivers around feeding in schools. These are the main 4 that are most talked about. There were 2 others, and I have linked it here as well. So if Rip shares out the slides with everyone, you can click on the 6 waivers and it'll take you to the Department of Education's website. You can read a little bit more about each one of these waivers. So the first was that in regular summer feeding or seamless summer administration, you normally have to have something called congregate feeding, which is when students need to come and be in the same place, the same time to receive the meal. Because we were not supposed to be together at this time, there was a waiver to allow for non-congregate feeding, which allowed schools to provide meals off-site. And so meals could be picked up. That's why there was a lot of the term grab and go at this time. And so in Arkansas, that waiver was granted on March 14th, and the USDA has extended this waiver as well as a couple other waivers throughout the rest of the summer. So you can see that up to the August 31st deadline. That, of course, might change depending on how the pandemic is continuing or what it looks like in August. The second waiver was mealtime flexibility, right? Okay, and so that one we were granted on March 20th. And so this allowed breakfast and lunch to be served at the same time or offered on multiple days of meals at one time. So this is where schools were then able to do, instead of serving 1 meal at breakfast, 1 meal at lunch per day, they could combine those meals. And so on a grab and go sense, a parent could come or a student could come to pick up their meal and they would get a breakfast and a lunch at the same time. We then continued to see school districts because they realized that that was taking a lot of staff time every day, they went to something called you know, like twice a week boxes or even weekly boxes, which would include 5 breakfasts and 5 lunches. And so there would be like a set time per week that a family could come and pick that up. The next waiver was a meal pattern flexibility. And so this allowed schools to continue to provide meals when a meal component was not available. So what that means is that there are certain pieces on a plate that have to exist. And because the pandemic affected many parts of our life, it definitely impacted our food supply. And what this meant is that distributors and child nutrition directors, as they were trying to purchase food, did not have the same access as they used to have. But there was still the importance of feeding children and feeding our community. So this waiver allowed for more flexibility with meal patterns and the specific fruits, vegetables, grains, meat, dairy that were on the plate. Finally, the fourth waiver that I'm talking about here is the waiver for parent-guardian pickup. So this waiver allows schools to distribute meals to parents and guardians to take home to their children. In Arkansas, districts have to provide and develop a process to make sure that meals are distributed only to the parents and guardians of eligible children. That duplicate meals, you know, are not distributed. These meals are going to families that have children in them, not going to families with just adults. So some examples of how districts have done that would be using a student ID number or a lunch number, since families would already have known those, that could be like a checks and balances system. And so this is the third waiver, as you can see, between non-congregate feeding, mealtime flexibility, and parent-guardian pickup that was recently extended in the past couple weeks from the USDA through the end of August. The meal pattern one has not, to my recollection, and so it will expire on June 30th unless the USDA changes that or provides an extension. So I want to show some photos because I think photos, we all know, they say 1,000 words. You can just see the hard work of all of the child nutrition directors, their staff, and their volunteers, ensuring that kids had access to food. In Ashdown, you can see them scooping fruit into cups that then they could put into individualized meals that could be packaged and sent to families. In Caddo Hills, you can see how they were using the long cafeteria tables to spread out all the meals because there were so many they needed to create. In Cave City, you can see part of the team working on prepping food. So sorry, my phone is thinking I'm talking to Siri. They are prepping food. In Clinton School District, you can see the child nutrition director there frustrated, trying to order food from distributors that didn't have food that they needed, and being told that they were out of something or having to substitute it. At Centerpoint, this is an example of a weekly box, like a multiple meal box, where you can see the fruit servings here, you can see vegetables, you can see grains, dairy, kind of the whole package. This is what was part of that multi-meal box. In Cedar Ridge School District here, you can see just how much space it took to have all these meals separated. You can also see them using their racks that normally store food that they're in the midst of cooking, but storing additional bags. A few more photos for us. Foreman School District, you can see here all the bags lined up. It's in the top left. All the bags lined up with meals, the whole staff wearing masks, responding to our CDC guidelines. At Drew Central School District, on the bottom left, you can see them using school buses to deliver meals. Same with Danville School District. You can see a bunch of teachers and staff and child nutrition directors and volunteers in front of the school buses, which were crucial at this time to take meals to the community and to families. At Fordyce School District, you can see paper sacks, them all lined up again on those cafeteria tables. And in Jessieville School District, they have their masks on, working really hard. Now, some of the main struggles that child nutrition director and child nutrition programs felt were the constant changing regulations and guidance. At the beginning of the pandemic, a lot was happening really quickly, and everyone wanted to do the right thing. They wanted to make sure kids had access to food. They wanted to make sure that they were meeting all the guidelines. They wanted to make sure they could have food coming in and that they were using the food that they had already they had a surplus of already. So there was a lot of moving parts. Communication was really key at this time, but that was a bumpy ride. Some of the main problems that came out of this was that there was a lack of food from our food supply being slightly disrupted, distribution being changed. There were substitutions. There's also lack of funds to purchase local food because funding at this time needed to be transitioned to the additional costs of packaging or prepackaged foods, because all of these meals had to be in their own container. So if you think about the weekly boxes, those boxes had to be purchased, which were not normally purchased when the kids would come through with their trays. So all of that adds up. And so it was harder to purchase local at this time. I did talk to someone in Harrisburg School District who was so excited on one of their last weeks that they were able to get some strawberries from Billsbury's. And they were they did this because they wanted their students and their children to feel loved and appreciated during this hard time, because we as adults know this is impacting us, but children, young adults are also experiencing you know, changing emotions. And so in Harrisburg, they thought that this would be a great surprise for all of their students. Finally, one of the other struggles was around safety and security around COVID-19 guidelines. And those were changing a bit at the beginning, you know, of wearing masks, not wearing masks, if that's required, if that's not required, specific distancing, you know, and at this point too, districts were having some say in particularly what they were wanting to do. So there was not only state guidance coming down from the governor and the Secretary of Education, but also school districts had a say. So all of those safety and security guidelines made this struggle. But in the nation, about 30% of schools stayed open to provide some sort of meal. But in Arkansas, we had 90% of our school districts staying open, providing meals to our community in some way, which is incredible. And we are a state with a high free and reduced number, which is correlated to poverty. So about 65%, 65 to 70% of our students in Arkansas qualify for free or reduced lunch. So when we had 90% of our districts remaining open, being able to serve free meals to students and children 18 and under, that was incredible that we were able to provide that food access. A few more pictures for us. So you can see Lawrence County School District here, Marion and Mayflower, all working really hard. Same with Ozark School District, Nevada School District, and McCrory. You can see the school buses being used, different ways to transport material from crates to tubs, and that assembly line situation we have. And finally, a few final photos. Valonia School District in the top right, you can see all their spread out meals that they have, and Sheridan School District underneath using boxes to help pull the materials out and then create the lunches. In Pocahontas, they had I'm sorry, it was just supposed to be Pocahontas, not Pocahontas Chapel. I love this photo that they have of their gown, their Clorox wipes, their hand sanitizer, their mask, trying to bring some lightheartedness into all of this. And you can see in Parker's Chapel, the meals being distributed, and then in Whitehall, they shared this beautiful letter that someone wrote as a thank you. And so all of these photos that I'm showing were shared from child nutrition directors to really tell their story around school meals. And I did want to just briefly touch on some work with Farm to School. A lot of the work that I have been working on transitioned, like I said, to that Arkansas COVID-19 food access map. But we still engaged in conversation around Farm to School. With school gardens, we hosted school garden roundtables to support and create digital community. We joined many conversations from the National Farm to School Network around guidelines with COVID-19, and most recently around racial and social justice and how this is a food justice issue. With education, we saw teachers you know, Zooming or FaceTiming from the garden, or giving daily updates on animals to their classes in their school. And we saw child nutrition directors, some purchasing local, but many just staying open and providing food, which was incredible at this time. So these were just a few flyers that we created. One other notable event we had was an event with Heifer Ranch. We had a farm field trip, and it was live on YouTube. It was really fun to provide that and go through their whole ranch, their farm, get to see what they were growing, ask questions of the farmer, Sean Passera, and Tyler at Heifer. And lastly, I would say that we continue to have more webinars and discussions around farm to school. We want to continue to provide that professional development opportunity. And in March, we talked about summer garden successes, April, food safety in the garden. May, we recently talked about school garden program, school meal programs, excuse me. And in June, we're going to talk about farm to early childhood education, which is our 0 to 5-year-old children. I will quickly mention that our Arkansas Grown School Garden of the Year contest is open. So schools, public or private, are eligible, and a school also means K-12, an alternative learning environment, or an early care center, are all eligible to apply to the contest, and there's 5 categories, which you can receive funding from Farm Credit. And just lastly, in Pulaski County, it's been really exciting to collaborate with an AmeriCorps program called Full Circle Farm Corps, which is an AmeriCorps program that focuses on the pillars of farming, teaching, and outreach in Pulaski County at community gardens. But there's been a summer opportunity where 20 additional AmeriCorps members have come on board, and we're actually currently training them in their orientation week this week right now. And they're going to be supporting community gardens, but also 50% of their time school gardens in Pulaski County. So we're really excited to launch that additional collaboration and partnership to grow gardens, to provide food security to families, and be the boots on the ground this summer that schools need to continue their gardens when kids aren't around or families aren't around in the same way that they used to be. So I think that's all I have for us, but just wanted to give a good overview of school meals mainly, and then how we're still stepping into the farm to school realm moving forward. And we will continue to provide events, trainings, and we're looking into as much funding as we can right now to support schools and have maybe a garden grant program or other programs like that, so that farm to school efforts can still continue on as schools are adjusting to the new whatever it will be when August rolls around. So thanks.
Thanks, Sarah.
To Allie.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. We appreciate all that information and updates. You're doing so many different and good things. It was good just to get an overview of it all. And I'll say I was on the May network conversations you had with school meals, and there was some really inspiring folks that are doing a lot of good work. So I encourage everyone to watch that. I think it was recorded. I left it, you know, with a couple tears in my eyes and just, you know, a good feeling overall. I think there's a lot of hard work that goes unrecognized, that's so valuable. And then Allie, I'll let you get here in just a moment. I had a couple of comments. I think, you know, it was neat to see the waivers and the flexibility there, and just all the different photos of people, you know, lining up the bags and putting all that together. And then just some amazing statistics, 65 to 70%, you know, of our students that need this. So it's so valuable. So we appreciate everything everyone's doing and sharing that out with us. Allie, before you get going, I think Melissa had her audio back. Melissa, are you there with us?
Yes, can you hear me? I'm so sorry.
We can, yeah. If you want to give your update for SNAP, we'd be happy to hear you.
Okay, awesome. My apologies. This is the trials of working from home and cooking while you're also doing stuff. So just a quick update to piggyback off of what Sarah was saying about supporting local farmers. We have this working group that's working on bringing online SNAP to Arkansas, and no state currently in the country allows for farmers and farmers markets or food hubs to participate in that online SNAP program. And we have about $500 million worth of SNAP dollars that come through the state every year. So we are getting very close to wrapping that up and getting our application in. We have a call with the Undersecretary's office tomorrow at USDA, and we also have a template for letters of support for anybody who wants to come forward and say, so we have the Arkansas Department of Ag, and I think, and then Dr. Perez is writing one for extension, etc. So I sent Rip a template for the letter of support from Larry Crutchfield at DHS, and so I'll let him share that out with the group and not take up any more of your time. But if you do want to contribute a letter of support, you can check out the template, and then we hope to have all those in by Friday so that we can get our application in, and that means that any of our SNAP families would be able to shop at the farmer's market or do a CSA or shop online through regional grocers, as well as the traditional, like the big grocers, Amazon and Walmart. So thank you everybody for what you're doing. I appreciate y'all. I have to bounce off to another call, but I appreciate you very much. Have a good day.
Thank you, Melissa. Yeah, we'll try to get that template out to anyone who's interested and maybe in a follow-up email. So thank you for your work that you're doing and pushing that forward.
You're welcome.
So, yeah, thank you. So Allie, if you're ready, we'll jump on over to you. And if you want to unmute.
I was really trying to be a good listener, so much so that
Yeah.
I have trouble with that.
You're good.
Thanks, Sarah. That was a great presentation, and it is a very nice setup for what I'm going to talk about at a local level. So thank you for doing such a great job at talking about the national and federal, and hopefully it paints a good picture for the attendees of the presentation. So here it comes. You guys see that well? Okay, great. So my name's Allie, and I'm the Director of Child Nutrition for Fayetteville Public Schools. And we have been, providing an emergency meal program for our kiddos since the day after the governor called it. So I just want to talk a little bit today about how our program evolved with the waivers that were coming out, the needs that we were realizing, and just after we could build capacity. It's just still boggles my mind how my staff was able to just, there was a directive from this level, then it came to this level, and then we rolled it out in a matter of like hours, days, like not much time. So I'm just so proud of them. I also wanted to point to this plate because, part of, extension and what Sarah does is farm to school, and I wanted to showcase on, more of a normal day what our meals can look like. This is Anna Fisher with UAMS. Many of you probably know her. She took this photo, but it's just a picture of one of our local harvest lunches that we celebrate in October and to celebrate National Farm to School Month. So there's local rice and tortillas, edamame, kale, sweet potatoes, popsicle, apple, cucumbers on that tray, and the milk, which you can't see, but that has really had to be pared down during this time. But I did want to talk to you guys a little bit about how we're continuing it on during the emergency program, but then also my wheels are turning on how we can keep supporting our local growers with our program as we open and close during the school year, because it's probably not a matter of if the school's closed next year, it's a matter of like when and how do we respond. So I wanted to give you some numbers about hunger in Arkansas. Sarah talked a lot about this too, but I just wanted to cover a few things from the No Kid Hungry organization. And these numbers are pre-COVID, so they're probably higher, and those numbers are still being collected. So in Arkansas, 1 in 4 kids struggle with hunger. That's incredible. And about 63% of students in Arkansas qualify for free and reduced lunches. So the need is high overall in our state. Nationally ranked, we're 3rd for childhood food insecurity, 6th for participation in the breakfast program. So we have pretty high participation in breakfast, and 43rd in summer meal program participation. So we probably could do a little better there. But one thing to note, and we all know it, that Arkansas is rural and has high needs in some areas, and the development is spread out, and transportation, especially public, can be limited. So that might account for some of the lower summer meal program participation. It's hard to get people to those sites when we don't have buses running in the summer. So during our regular service, we have about just over 10,000 kids in our school district at 16 schools. Daily, we serve about 4,300 lunches and 2,000 breakfasts. And our free and reduced rate is 38%. So it's much lower than the statewide average. We really try to focus on scratch cooked meals and farm to school. Last year was the first year of those efforts from the state level, that if you receive a certain amount of federal funds or state funds, that you have to make an effort to purchase at least 20% of your food budget locally. And with the parameters and the definitions within that report, and we procure about 25% of our food budget locally, spending it on local foods. And that's anything from, growers who back up their truck on a weekly basis and unload into our district warehouse, but also, we count Highland Dairy and our local bread company, but also some foods that we can buy in bulk in a frozen state, like Sheldon and Mame and grass-fed ground beef. So, and then we offer a ton of different types of meal programs. I'll let you read it there. But I will say that a lot of these different types of meal services helped us prepare for this remote feeding and packaged kind of setting. Just alternative ways to feed kids besides the traditional sit at the lunch table and eat off of a tray. So including our winter break meal program, our food truck, some of our grab and go options. So breakfast in the classroom. So our mission statement, well, Rip already read it, so you know what our mission is. We want to feed kids really great food from people that we know grew it. It's just some things to think about. These things are always playing in the back of my mind and our team's mind when we're making decisions during the regular school year, but also during a state of emergency. Parent and administrator expectations, market trends. I mean, as Sarah mentioned, we've been having shortages in certain products because, somebody gets a great idea on how to do something better and then everybody wants to buy it. And I've been waiting on a truckload of shelf-stable milk for 2 months. I mean, the need is high in specific things, and it's really good to be innovative on the front end so you can get ahead of that curve. So, so I'm on a lot of national calls and reading anything I can get my hands on to stay ahead of the curve there, so I can make sure that we don't have breaks in service for our kids. Food safety and sanitation, thinking about it always, but especially, I'll talk about this in a second, but when we're sending families home with a week's worth of meals, how do we keep it safe during preparation, but how do we package it and serve it in a way where it's easier for them to keep it safe for a full week? Plate cost, as you know, school meal programs work on a shoestring budget. Also, you might not know that child nutrition programs are a standalone budget separate from the school district. So when you think about a tax base or funds coming into a district, those do not trickle over to child nutrition. So we fund our program and stay afloat with federal reimbursement by claiming meals and then submitting reports to our state, but then also a la carte sales and full price meals for adults and students who pay the full price, and then catering. So a lot of the things we can do with farm to school and whatnot, because we actually have a pretty large a la carte program that helps us afford some really high quality ingredients. So you know, our goal is for food alone, not labor or anything else, to spend about $1 on food per lunch. So it's not a lot that we have to stretch across 5 food groups. You know, we're always thinking about our regulations, our staff skill, and the time that they're in the kitchens. They work 6-hour shifts. So really trying to get some scratch cooking in there. And then also, you know, what are the philosophies around raising children who are confident eaters, so when they grow up, they're more likely to choose healthy foods for themselves and know how to prepare them and eat them. And then also, just after all of that, you make a decision, will the kids even eat it? I don't know. So there's a lot to think about when we're making considerations during the regular school year and also an emergency situation. So Sarah did a really great overview of the waivers, and what I wanted to do was talk about the waivers that we applied for and kind of like the timeline of response for our district. So I have to put that down so I can see the full slide. Okay, so I think at the federal level, March 13th, the non-congregate feeding waiver was put into place. On Sunday, the governor closed schools at 4 p.m. on a Sunday. Love him for that. And then the next day we were serving kids in a completely different fashion from the week prior, when we had 16 sites serving kids coming down a line, and we just fully transitioned to our summer program. And there was very little notice. You know, we were waiting for the call. And so basically we just started planning without any guidance from the governor, a full summer program. So, and, you know, getting food ready and ordered, and getting my staff and making sure that they were safe to work and wanted to work in this emergency situation, so that when the call was made, we just had to apply for the waiver, and then the next day we started a program. And so I can't tell you how much information about COVID in general and like how to run a meal program during this time just came from links on Facebook, you know, good links from the School Nutrition Association and School Meals at Rock, and, you know, anything I could get my hands on to just stay ahead of the curve and start planning. Because as you know, food service, we have to plan way in advance for things to happen down the road. So we immediately initiated our summer meal program. And what we typically do in the summer is a snack and a lunch. So that's what we started with, because that's what we were familiar with. One at an area eligible site, meaning they have a typical free and reduced rate of higher than 50%. And then we used our food truck that we have normally for the summer program, and we parked it at the library. And during that time, we were, you know, serving kids whatever we could just pull out of the schools, because now our budget is in the tank and I can't really buy a bunch of new food. So it was really important to us that we used our existing food and made little to no purchases except a bunch of packaging. We had to do that because we had gotten so far into scratch cooking that a lot of my food is not packaged. So, you know, just trying to get that shipped in and use our existing bags that we did have on hand, why those things took 2 to 3 weeks to come in. So meanwhile, we have warehouse workers that can't work. And so my assistant director and I are basically warehouse staff for the first, you know, 3 to 4 weeks of this program. So we're going out to schools and just pulling food out of freezers and coolers, loading it into our warehouse trucks, and just getting it to the sites so people can prepare it. And just, it was madness. So, you know, we started with what we knew and a small program just to get food existing somewhere for people. So that came right after that first waiver and the closing of schools by the governor. Then we started bus routes almost the next day. We had a whole list of bus routes. I think we started with about 20, and then the next day we added 3, and the next day we added 4, really trying to adjust to where people were telling us, hey, what about over here? And we had awesome bus drivers and volunteers from our school district, teachers and people who weren't working and wanted help in some way, just distributing meals while we also had our main sites. Let's see, looking at on the left side, March 20th, more waivers came out. And so what was kind of frustrating is these waivers really came out they would basically come out on like Friday afternoons. And there was just like a series of them coming out like every week. So we felt like we started to have a game plan, and then they would relax more. And then every time those changes would come, it was just like a really big upheaval in the program, and it was very stressful. And, you know, trying to have that out in time to keep feeding kids and not have a break was pretty challenging. So that mealtime flexibility came out. So we decided that we would offer, instead of lunch and snack, lunch and breakfast. We'd never done that before, but just to get more food to kids, bigger meals. But then also, you know, over time we expanded to allowing them to pick up all their breakfast and all their lunches at once. We just loaded it into the back of the car. We don't hand anything to anyone, and just go on. So let's see. So while all that expansion was happening, it was also spring break, and we chose to feed kids over spring break. And then we were still offering the buses and still the two main sites. After that, there was an area eligibility flexibility waiver that came out that allowed us to serve from any school we wanted, not just the schools that have free and reduced of higher than 50%. So that gave us some flexibility to get out of the community where we needed to be. Let's see, on March 31st, we transitioned to the weekly pickup all at one time. So that was 10 meals per student. So that looks like a grocery bag full of breakfast, a grocery bag full of lunch, and then a bag of fresh produce, and then a bag of milk. And that's a lot of food, and that's per kid. So we were, you know, a lot of food was going to families who needed them. And during this transition where we went from them being able to pick up lunch and breakfast at once, but they had to come daily, to just a weekly pickup, we were like, okay, people are really gonna like this. We're gonna increase by 800% as far as prepped food capacity. And we ran out with I think 25 minutes to spare. And and we could have fed, you know, 1,000 more families. They were just lined up from across the block. We had people coming from Siloam. And, you know, since I think it was kind of like the toilet paper thing, people were really like nervous about food supply and really wanting to like make sure they were good and good for the long haul. Since then, you know, we've kind of normalized into what our real participation is. But that was a crazy week. And I remember that day just looking around. It was like we serve at 11, and just looking around at like 10 o'clock, and people are just running everywhere, loading food into cars. And I remember there were like 3 warehouse guys that were hoisting a mobile food cabinet into a box truck because our lift had broken. And it was just like, I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, this is never gonna happen. And then it totally happened because we have such a great team. So it was chaos, and everybody got fed. Well, we did run out, but we learned from that, and we have not run out since. So continuing on, and I'll kind of go faster on this. In April, we had to open a second prep site because we just didn't have the cooler or freezer space to do what we needed to do, and we needed to keep our food safe. So in the beginning, we were serving out meals, but it was becoming clear that food safety was going to be an issue if we continued to expand and go at that level. We were beyond our capacity. I'll talk about some grants that we got in a moment. But and then the next day we expanded from 1 site to 5 sites and continued the meal service. So we're at 3 elementary schools, a middle school, and then the food truck location, just really trying to hit the different areas of town, but also we wanted to consider the other people feeding people in the community. So Salvation Army and Life Source, and we have a lot of food organizations that were doing this work too, and we didn't want to overstep and then miss another place where we could provide services. So we were just one part of this whole wheel, providing services to our community. We're not the only ones doing it. So during that time, I was thinking, what can we actually prepare that we can stuff in a bag? And that was really limiting. So we have a great relationship with Rogers Public Schools, Child Nutrition, and they let us borrow 2 tray sealers and just a ton of trays and film just to start putting things in trays so that we could start freezing them. And then a little bit of my scratch cooking could come back and I could use more of my inventory. Also, we switched from bagging 1 million little milks for a week's worth of milks to, half-gallon sizes that, wouldn't take so long to stuff. On April 8th, we began wearing face masks along with a lot of the early adopters. That was also a challenge because we couldn't get face masks. So we had a Girl Scout make us our first set of masks, and it was really special, and it was a good time. We were feeling love. And I will just say that the community has been so supportive of my staff. The entire rest of the school year, every week, there was some community member that wanted to feed them, give them a gift certificate, show them some love in some way, and they really felt proud in those moments. On April 13th, my manager quit right before our Tuesday weekly meal service. And I put that in there just to say that this was a really stressful time for everyone. And it's real. Like, the stress of an emergency is real. And it just showed, like, these are humans doing this work, and we have to take care of each other. So the next day we got another manager and we went on to feed kids, and it went so smoothly. And a lot of that was because of the good work that she put in early into the program. May 1st was Super Lunch Hero Day, and we did a great shout out to our staff, and Tyson donated some really cool caps and aprons and made my staff feel really special. And then on May 26th, we announced our summer program that continued on this service through the whole year. So usually we have 4 sites, 1 main site, and the food truck hits 3 other sites, and we do lunch and snack. So we are serving 4-fold over what we normally serve in the summer. So about 8,000 meals on Tuesdays is what we're going to do through the summer, and usually we're serving around 450 kids a day. So there they are. They're the heroes. So we had two prep kitchens open. And then some people who just came on Tuesdays to hand out meals so that the rest of the staff could keep cooking for the following week. We did receive quite a few grants to be able to do this because, our program was not outfitted for this. Of course, a lot of districts weren't. So we received several grants or product donations to get us. A lot of it was for packaging and for food safety, to making sure during transport out to the remote sites, we could keep the food safe as long as possible so that families would have more time to, have their food out of temperature control. So we wanted to control it the entire way as far as temperatures were concerned. Also, I want to point out that with the UAMS grant, we wrote some money in there to continue to buy local foods. I'm going to talk about that in a second. Received a grant from No Kid Hungry. The Walmart Giving Foundation was the biggest one. It allowed us to buy this refrigerated truck that was an absolute game changer for food safety and capacity. And it's something that we'll definitely be able to use when the pandemic's over. The Lifetime Foundation donated money for a single refrigerator for our food truck, so we can have temperature control of all of our foods there. And then Tyson donated transport cart and some cool swag for my staff. Those hats are cool too. I got one, and it's like one that I'm gonna wear all the time. Buying local. So we, at first, were receiving donations of about, 15 heads of lettuce from Ozark All Seasons there on the left. And then once we received the grant, we were able to do a few purchases of their lettuce into our program. So that was really nice to support the local economy and have really high quality lettuce for our kids who really need it. And then late when they're ripe, and later in this month, we'll be buying peaches and nectarines from A&A Orchards. I just wanted to give you an idea of what some of our trade meals and some of our packaged foods look like, just trying to provide a variety, ramping up the protein. We don't have to serve protein at breakfast, which I think is kind of crazy, but I really tried to amp up the protein in these meals so the kids could stay full for as long as possible. And that's really kind of how it's been so far, not including any of our summer numbers. Last week, we have served over 100,000 meals, and it's because of these awesome staff here on the right-hand side working their booties off, and they're just so proud to do it too. It's kind of their calling, and you know, this is always a food assistance program all school year, but especially now, it's their time to shine. So if you want to follow us, I have an Instagram at Once for Lunch Fayetteville, and a Facebook page, which is really more of our Farm to School page at FPS Farm to School. And if you have any questions, you can shoot me a quick email.
Thank you, Allie. We appreciate you sharing all that information about what you all are doing at Fayetteville Public Schools. I think, you know, this last slide here, just over 100,000 meals in under 3 months. I mean, that's, what is that, roughly 33,000 meals a month or something like that. So that's impressive. That's amazing. And that's one district in the state. Just imagine what that, you know, is across the state. I think these presentations speak for themselves in terms of what everyone is accomplishing in such a quick, chaotic time. I think it speaks to resilience, ingenuity, dedication for what you're doing. And I think personally, you know, for me, the reason I was drawn to local foods work and food safety, food systems work is for these reasons. So I applaud both of you, Sarah and Allie, for what you're doing and what you're sharing with us. And I think a couple things, Allie, in your presentation that I noted was sort of the power of social media, digital communication at this time. I know we're all kind of overwhelmed with Zooms and with Facebook and Instagram posts and all that, but I think also too the positive side of it is that it's allowing us to receive information quickly. I think it was great you're trying to still support the local foods. You know, I know there's a lot of barriers to that sometimes, especially in this time, but it's wonderful to see that you're still trying to reach out. And the last thing I'll say that I noted was, you know, you said about your manager quitting. We are all human. We've had COVID, now the other issues with race that are springing up. So I think we've just been bombarded this year. And so people are dealing with it in different ways. And so totally understandable, but I'm glad, you know, you're able to recoup and find someone. So again, thank you for sharing. I'm going to open it up if anyone has any comments, questions, discussion. Angela or Julia, if you guys, Natasha, if you guys saw any comments come through on chat that we should highlight. But please, anyone who wants to chime in. Well, perhaps you guys were so thorough and amazing with your presentations that everyone has just been left speechless. But no, I think they were both, you know, great presentations, and it was something that we've enjoyed listening to. We will be posting these again, like I said, on YouTube and on our website. So please feel free to take a look there eventually. And I will try to get an email out. I know, Sarah, you had some links you had mentioned, and Melissa had mentioned about the template for the SNAP. So we'll get those out to folks. Just to let everyone know, we are going to take a break from the open space discussions for a few weeks. I think we're going to resume July 20th. So just to focus on a couple other things. These started in reaction to COVID, just to kind of allow a space for everyone to come together. We have had some great discussion and topics but we do need to sort of focus on some other things now that we're calming down a little bit. Allie or Sarah, do you guys have anything to close with that you guys want to mention? Not to put you on the spot, but just if there was anything you wanted to say.
I was just gonna say thanks to Allie. It was great to present with you and all the work that you have done. Thank you so much for sharing your local example and all the incredible work that you and your staff were able to do. It's so impressive seeing that 100,000 plus number.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for having that for us.
Yeah, I would just say, you know, I think a lot of us wonder about those initiatives that we're really working on that are challenging, and we're still trying to build support and protocol and procedure for them, like Farm to School. I mean, it's expanding slowly in Arkansas, and I think, you know, we're really working on our food waste, and that's probably going to be put on hold for a little while. And to just like, I'm sure we all have some project that was like, oh, COVID, like we were like so close to making a breakthrough there, and the stupid virus, you know. So just to like keep advocating for those things, and, you know, keep talking about them, because there'll be a time again where we have like the light bulb come on, and it's like, that's how we'll continue local, or that's how we'll continue reducing food waste. And
yeah, and I think a silver lining, I don't know if it's a silver lining, but I guess one thing you could consider is I mean, this was all terrible. We don't necessarily want to do it again, but you've kind of maybe been forced to think about certain ways and processes that you never might have been, and maybe you're prepared for something. So you're totally right. We had projects on our team. I know you all have had things you've had to pause. Farms have had to stop operations, but given us an opportunity to think about where we do need to put more funding, where we do need to put more resources. So I think resilience is the big theme I've gathered from both of your presentations. So good luck going forward, and thanks again. And I think with that, unless anyone else has anything they want to say, we're about at 3:45, so we're at a good stopping point. So thanks everyone.